Welcome to the much anticipated QnA 2.0. Very glad to see everyone here. So I'd like to actually acknowledge you guys for the first time. So thank you everyone. You made this channel possible through your participation and enthusiasm. It's really rubbed off on me, and I'm hoping to find a bunch of other people like you who really want to get into some of these really cool ideas and make the world a little bit of a better place. We'll start off with the first question. It's one I get a lot. How do you know what you know? To help you understand this, I'm going to answer in the form of a question. How did you grow your head? You've done it before. You probably couldn't do it again. You know, you couldn't answer it, but you did it. But yeah, I'm not going to leave you with that sort of non-answer. I'm going to give you a more direct answer as well. I've done decades of study. I've read a wide variety of books. I've listened to a large variety of seminars, and I've really put a lot of just many hours into this. I had a good upbringing, Christian upbringing, so I learned a lot from that as well. I was born without materialism. No one around me was materialistic, so that helped a lot too. Yeah, so that should answer the question. Plus, I'm incredibly competitive. I work very hard to make sure that I am always improving. Next question. A buddy of mine I met online named Nice Rain asks, what do you think the difference between ambition and greed is in our current society? I say ambition is a strong desire to bring value to the world, whereas greed is a strong desire to take value from the world. There is a gray area between ambition and greed. There are greedy people who are also ambitious, and there are ambitious people who are also greedy. So there is a spectrum there, but a purely ambitious person wants to bring value. They want to create a skill. They want to create a great product or service, or they want to build a great foundation, something like that. Whereas a greedy person, their goal is to fill their bank account at the expense of anyone around them. A good friend of mine from online left a comment, and he asked, waves or particles? Well, in the past, we've all learned in physics that the very small subatomic particles, such as photons, behave a lot like waves. And it's really more of a philosophical question. At the macro scale, it's particles, it's stuff, we can interact with it. But when we really zoom in and isolate these individual particles, they don't act like particles, they actually act like waves. At its core, I think everything is much more accurately described in waves. And in fact, we ourselves are like a wave. If you go back 20 years in time, barely any of the material in your body is the same material that was there 20 years ago. So the fact is that we are like a wave, and that explains the malleability of our bodies. That explains how we can really restructure our physique and our minds as well. We can restructure our worldviews. Really, if you understand that people are kind of fluid beings, always changing, always with the potential to grow, you can get a lot more out of yourself. So yeah, my final answer, things are more like waves than particles, but particles are a useful approximation at large scales. Alright, so for those of you who've seen several of my videos, you may have noticed this guy, Martin, in my comment sections, and he's always got something good to add. And Martin had two questions for me, and they were both really good questions, so I'll get into them here. First off, he asks, do you think there's any truth to the idea that when properly engaged in high-quality sexual intercourse, the lovers actually temporarily expand their identities and selves into each other and create or exist metaphysically as some sort of higher-order person? Much love. It's a good question because, the boundaries of the self are not as strictly defined as we'd like to think. What happens if you clip your fingernails? Were those fingernails part of you? Are you any less of a person than you were before you had your fingernails cut? So yeah, people can exist without an arm. They can exist without a foot, right? So when two people interact at such an intimate level, in a way, yeah, I mean, they're getting closer to the truth that we're all the same consciousness, right? We have our own individual perspectives and memories, but really there's just one consciousness flowing through everyone, funneled in a certain way based on your unique characteristics. And this includes animals too, and even inanimate objects, right? Just they operate at different levels. For example, you take a tuning fork, you smack it and it'll ring for a while. This is a very primitive form of consciousness, believe it or not. So back to the sex question. Yeah, I mean, what about the sun, right? The solar energy from the sun is supplementing us. What about the mitochondria within our own cells? They have their own unique DNA, yet they give energy to us. So it's like the sun, the mitochondria within our cells, you could argue for or against the fact that they're part of yourself. What about the food you eat? At what point during digestion does it become you and stop being whatever it was? I could go on, you know? Like twins, they share a lot of the same genetic material. To what extent does this mean they're the same people? What about conjoined twins who share limbs? Who does the limb belong to? Is it one or two people? Well, it's two souls, but there's a number of these fringe cases which sort of reveal how our definition of self depends on opinion. You know, it depends on perspective. You could argue that the whole Earth is one organism, one biosphere. You could argue the whole universe is an organism. You could argue that each individual atom is a separate consciousness. So, you know, like I said, it's a multi-perspectival thing. If you guys watch my Stage Yellow video, that'll make a little more sense to you. But that being said, yeah, during sexual intercourse, you just become more aware of that in one regard. There's other ways you can realize, like, for example, working together in a team. You start to realize that, like, you know, like the geese that fly through the sky. It's not like one goose decides to change its direction and the rest follow them. They all just sort of do it together. And, you know, they don't form this V shape because they think it'll look cool. They just form that shape because it's an easy way for all of them to see without blocking each other's view. So yeah, a flock of geese, a swarm of bees, a colony of ants, a church full of people, a married couple. These things put into perspective the lengths to which we're sharing some version of consciousness. We have some commonalities which we both experience. So yeah, that's my answer. Next question, also by Martin. Any thoughts on the purpose and function of choral in relation to the society, group, whole? And then he goes on to elaborate, like, as an individualist, Yang stage, and being an octave up in the second tier from red in the first, it would seem to me that it should have some kind of leadership or pioneer role. Would love to hear your thoughts. Peace. So you see here, I'll put it on the screen, how each stage represents a switch from individualist to collectivist. And I talked all the way up through turquoise, and I've been avoiding talking about choral. I'm a little bit, I'll be honest with you, I'm a little embarrassed to even talk about yellow and turquoise because it's so alien to most people, and it takes so much explanation to bring it down into words, because really it's an experience, it's a lifestyle, it's an outlook. And if you don't have these ideals, and if you don't see the world like that, it won't make any sense to you. So yeah, I have been avoiding talking about choral. If I talk about choral on YouTube, it's like no one can relate, and I don't believe it belongs in Spiral Dynamics anyway. Spiral Dynamics is sort of about society and a person's place in society and consciousness growth, and choral really is beyond all that. It's not about anything to do with this world. And yeah, maybe I'll do a premium video on my website, ascended.us, at some point. but I'm not going to release one on YouTube. It doesn't fit. But I'm telling you, this Q&A thing, you can get me to talk about anything. This guy asks a question, I will deliver. So I will talk about coral right here. So I just want you guys to know, spiral dynamics is made up, right? All we do is we observe the world, we see a pattern of consciousness development, and we just divide it up, right? So whatever coral is, we can say something about it. For example, as you mentioned, it is individualist. It is an octave up from yellow. Remember, yellow was objectivity, multi-perspectival appreciation, and it was all these sort of advanced high consciousness explorations, right? That's yellow in a nutshell. So what would be an octave up from that? Well, it's the ultimate experience of unity. I did discuss consciousness a little bit, how the same consciousness flows through all of us, and it's like you go off into the woods and you meditate in the cave for 10 years, right? That's the type of thing a coral person can do. But I don't see that as something to attain. Like, you know, it's not like, oh, I want to get to that point, right? It's something that will just happen if you reach a certain point. The Buddhists, they have a certain concept called the bodhisattva, which means they sort of go off, they have their revelation, but they come back to society. So this is kind of like what coral is, right? They've experienced the oneness of everything, and they still have time for the mere mortals, so to speak. But yeah, some people do have coral experiences in their lives, and the ability to carry this with you, to have direct access to the coral experience, is what I would say it means to be in coral. You don't need some prerequisite condition to have pure bliss and appreciation. And Martin also wants to know if coral should have some sort of a leadership or pioneer role. And that's actually not what coral's about. It's not about leading others. It's just about going into the self and just sort of being content. You know, everything exists simultaneously. So coral doesn't necessarily lead. I'd say a turquoise person would be more likely to lead than a coral person. So that's all I got to say about coral for this video. That was more than I ever anticipated to say about it on YouTube. So we'll go up to the next question here. And I want to do a especially big shout out to Dersalka. I hope I'm saying that right. I think it's a Russian word for skate, maybe. And she's a great skater. And she leaves some of the best comments I've seen on my videos. And her question was, when is a new video being published? And this was before I started releasing roughly one per week. And she goes, a little incentive there. And she's not kidding either. That's some good incentive to have somebody who you respect ask you for content. I have an obligation now. So, you know, people like her, as well as all the other people who ask questions and the other people who have been commenting on my other videos, like my buddy Martin, you guys have really made me inspired to keep this going. Each video takes roughly 20, maybe even 30 minutes in some cases. That Stage Yellow video took a long time. And I only get like 50 views on some of these, at least for the time being. Maybe if the channel blows up somehow. Yeah. But yeah, my answer to your question is I try to release about one video every week. I've been working about 50 hours a week at my day job. I'm a learning coach. I can explain a little bit about that later. There was a question about that, so I'll get into that. There's a huge time investment. It takes a lot of energy as well. I have no problem putting these videos out, but I'd really like to see more people, right? If I had 10,000 views rather than 100, I would be much more motivated. And that being said, you know, it's good to have this stuff out there. Even if it changes a few people's lives a little bit, it's still worth it. So thanks, Dersalka. And this next question's from someone in real life who happened to watch my turquoise video. And they want to know, what are multi-purpose actions? I talked about multi-purpose actions a little bit. I'll agree. I don't think I really described it completely. I just sort of gave you guys a taste of what it might mean, but I'm going to put a graphic on the screen to help you guys understand this. So throughout life, there are patterns which constantly arise. And sometimes, if you act while a pattern is at a certain point, you can get a greater response for it. For example, if you invest in gold while it's cheap and then sell while it's high, you can make a lot of money. Well, there are various actions which can accomplish multiple things at once. For example, you sell your house right before there's an earthquake in the area, at a time when there's a big opportunity somewhere else for you to have a great life in a different place. Okay, it's just the first example that came to my mind, but that's what multi-purpose actions is. Through an awareness of all of the patterns around you, you can see when everything lines up and it's the perfect time to act, you can get it done. Next question. All right, this one's actually really funny. I had a person, they didn't leave a question on my Q&A video. However, they decided to start we'll call it a debate. I feel like it was sort of a troll session. Maybe this person was being serious. I doubt it, but it's possible. And I'm going to show you guys the question here. So, in my very first Spiral Dynamics video, you'll notice that it says there are 14 comments in the comment section, but only one shows. And that's because YouTube's algorithm sort of scrubs all of what its algorithms consider to be distasteful from the internet. Essentially, they make it so nobody sees it unless they click sort by chronological order. Then it'll show up. But I don't like censorship. I don't care if you disagree with me or if you don't like something I said. I want to hear it. This guy B says, "Your descriptions are dripping with Marxist assumptions. Models the evolution of mankind's psychology." Again, it claims to, but that conclusion is founded on false premises. He doesn't say how it's false, he just says it's false. I'd like to know how that's false. How does Spiral Dynamics fail to model the evolution of mankind's psychology? It's chronological. I can put a date next to every stage in Spiral Dynamics which mankind has attained. There are stages which mankind has yet to get to, and we can talk about that. But of the stages which we've gone through, it's pretty much accurate. He says, transcend one's family. And that's actually not what I said. I'll play it for you right here. An ordinary person will tend to rise only to the level of their family or their society. For example, if you're born into a stage blue family with strict moral codes, chances are you'll quickly become that stage at an early age, and it'll take a lot of thinking outside of the box and much conscious effort and hard work to transcend the base level of one's family. So you see, I said transcends the base level of one's family, meaning consciousness. You can become more conscious, you can understand more about the world than your parents did, right? You can understand more about the world than your society does. You can understand more about the world than your president, right? It's all possible. It's been done before. Why can't you do it? Anyways, he said it's a Marxist psychological operation designed to attack cultural integrity. Okay, first of all, I'm just going to stop you there. This is not an attack on anybody. I'm taking an observed process of change, labeling it by colors, and he says what Spiral Dynamics is actually describing is the process of cultural subversion. It's not the process of cultural subversion. It's a process of evolution of one's consciousness. You can do this from any culture. You don't even have to ruin the culture you're part of to become higher consciousness, right? You can still partake in all of your cultural experiences and traditions, and you can understand the world a little better. Like I said in my Stage Yellow video, I said Stage Yellow, like blue, honors its own heritage. So if you're in Stage Yellow, you're not going to want to abolish all Christians. Let's say you grew up Christian and then you went through a lot of personal development. You're not going to want to destroy it. And he goes on, he keeps going and arguing, and I give him some good responses, but after a while he just gets so argumentative and he doesn't really address what I say, so I call it a night. Next question. What do I do for a living? I get this one a lot. I, for the past several years, have been working for a very reputable company who does good things in the world. And I'm a learning coach, meaning I teach jobs to people. I make sure that they do them safely, effectively, and I assist them throughout the day. And I also help them on the floor too. I'm a go-between for a lot of departments. I do a lot of communication, and yeah, it's a very busy job. This time of year especially, there's a lot of trainees, and I'm really proud of them. They're doing a good job this year, and I'm honored to help them. And after busy season, I'll have more time for this channel as well as my other pursuits. And the next question was, what's the deal with libertarianism? So somebody asked me my political view, and I told them I was a libertarian. And people are usually caught up between the Democrat-Republican false dichotomy, but there are other ways of seeing the world. And I think the best way to describe libertarianism is in this statement. The people delegate power to the government. It's not the other way around. The government doesn't hand out to you freedoms. Rather, we are a society of interconnected, interdependent people who have agreed, okay, maybe we should have a body of people which, with strict guidelines, does certain work for us, and we give them some tax money, right? So we have a court system, we have police, and I don't think we should abolish these things. Even if they are not perfect, we can improve on them. But there is no authority human being, even an elected official, no one elected even, no person can reduce our civil liberties. And the U.S. Constitution is a very important document. Everybody loves America. They want to come to America, or at least they used to. Everyone used to want to come to America and create a life, and many people have done such a thing. And the reason why people come to America is because of our liberty. So you take away the liberty, what good is the country? I got a video coming out, why are Biden's approval ratings low? I had fun with that one, so definitely check that one out when it comes out. But yeah, I'm not a political person. I just want the government to stay out of my life and out of my personal affairs. So there's a lot to say about libertarianism. Maybe I'll make videos about it, but I don't really care so much about the Libertarian Party. I wish the best for him, but the only libertarian I actually would get behind is Ron Paul. Yeah, so that's libertarianism.